Good evening, everybody. It's so lovely to be here, you know. We are part of one big family. And I really look forward to coming to Sweden. It's always very wonderful here, and you have such a beautiful church. So I bring greetings from the Trans-European Division near London, and it's great to know our family of God is all over the world, but especially this part in Europe, and this weekend especially here in Sweden. So I'm going to be talking about finding our unique mission, because we all have one. And do you know what yours is? Do you know what your mission is? Do you know how to find it? Because whatever it is, it's something that God has made you for that will bring you joy. And it's amazing when we discover it. So if we look at Matthew 5:14 in the Message Bible, Jesus tells us that we are here to be light, bringing out the God colors in the world. Actually, I just remembered something that I had in my bag, so I'm just going to get it. I'm not sure whether there's a place to put it. So busy enjoying myself eating, I forgot. But I have a special light to remind us of who we are. I don't know whether there's a socket near here. So here is my special light. That lights up.
You got the wrong plug.
I've got the proper plug on here. I did have it anyway. I hope I still. Oh no. Maybe I took it off again. Oh, shucks.
Oh, yeah, the little plug, yeah, maybe we can put it in.
Okay, because I had maybe it's in my bag somewhere else.
Let's see if I can. Oh, you got that one?
Yeah, I brought it along with me as well.
Okay.
Dear. Never mind.
We were hoping that England would go like the rest of the world, but, you know,
Sorry.
they just won't change the plug.
Do you know what I did? I had to charge up my laptop and I probably switched the plug at the last minute. But you get the idea. This shines really brightly. And just in case you guys are worried, you're there on the back. So this is for everybody. So we're here to be light, to bring out the God colours in the world. And that's amazing. So our lives are to show the world what God is like. And, oops, sorry, I'm forgetting to do this, aren't I? And now that I put you there on a hilltop, Jesus says, shine. He says, be generous with your lives. By opening up to others, you'll prompt people to open up with God, our generous Father in heaven. So our light shining from God helps people to see who God is, so they want to know him too. And our relationship with Jesus. So this one, it's not working so well because it's not connected. But when we're connected with Jesus, when he is filling up our heart, then it's amazing what happens. So it has to start with Jesus being connected, us being connected to Jesus and having our hearts fill with the light of his love. Thoughts on the Mount of Blessing. Ellen White says the followers of Christ are to go forth on their mission, diffusing the light of heaven upon those who are in darkness. The life of Christ in the soul, his love revealed in our character, makes us the light of the world. So his love in us and his character in us, shining through that, makes us a witness to the world. So we are light people like this one, but we're supposed to light up and not be like that. We're light people in this world, going out and showing people what God is like. So if you have a world without light, it doesn't have any color. And in the Message Bible, it says that we are to be the light, bringing out the God colors in the world, showing people all the wonderful ways that God loves us. And when we put light on the picture, we see that it brings out all those beautiful colors. And I wonder what colors of God your life shows in the world. Maybe we can't all do all of them, but each one of us is lighting up a space with colors of God's character around us. So what do lights help us to do? Lights are important. They help us to stay safe on the road. They help us to find our way in the darkness. They help us to see when the power is on an appliance. To notice when something needs fixing because the light is flashing and telling us you need to change something. And also the lovely lights we have when we celebrate together, the party lights. There's all different kind of lights that we can be, and all different kinds of ways that light helps us and helps us to show God's love. And being light is helping people to see God's loving character and his values. And we can do that through the way that we live our everyday lives. So I ask again, how do you help people to see the God colors in this world and the different aspects of his character? And if we think about the fruit of the Spirit, there are different things that we can show. Is it love that shows through? Is it joy? Is it your kindness? Is it your goodness? Is it your patience? What color do you bring out in this world to show God's character? So I just want you to think now, how are you already being light in this world? Where are you being a light? What kind of light are you? Because you are already a light. The fact that you're in here and that you love God and you've come to find out what your mission is tells me that you are already a light. And I wonder what kind of light you are, what light people see in you, and how we can help people to see more colors of God's love in our world. How can we be lights that are protective, guiding, and helpful in this difficult world? But we're not just called to be light, we're called to be salt. And I know this one is going to work because it doesn't have to plug in. So these are actually the salt from my house. So my husband's going to have a less tasty weekend. But anyway, these are people, salty people, to bring out the salt seasoning of God's character in this world. So lights are so people can see God, but when they taste the salt, they really experience what God is like. And I love these people because, look, they just love to hug. In fact, they've got bits chipped off them because my grandson says, hug, hug. And it's made some pieces fall off, so we had to stick them back on. So salt people are helping people to taste God's love. And so every day, these remind us on our table at home to be salt. So being salt is helping people to experience something, not just see it, but to feel it for themselves, to taste it, to taste and see that God is love, and to taste all the flavors more strongly, because that's what salt does for us. But salt does all sorts of other things. We have to be sensitive to add just the right amount. If we overdo it, it will be horrible. So we have to just sprinkle the right amount of God's salt into people's lives at just the right time. You can't tell if salt is in something until you actually taste it. You have to get up close to it and really, experience it. And God calls us to mingle with people like salt, so they can taste God's character through us. And salt changes whatever it's mixed with. When we go and mingle in the world with our love, our joy, our peace, we make a difference in the world. We change things by our presence because people can see that we bring God with us. So here's something to think about. How can we be the salt in the world? How can you be salt here in Stockholm? And salt does all sorts of things. It preserves, it's antiseptic, it enhances flavors, it melts ice, and it cleans things. So what kind of salt are you in the world? How are people tasting God's character through you? We know these words very well, where Ellen White says, there is a need for coming close to the people by personal effort. She says, if less time were given to sermonizing and more time spent in personal ministry, that's one-to-one friendship and caring, the greater results would be seen. She says, the poor are to be relieved, the sick cared for, those who are sad and bereaved need to be comforted, the ignorant instructed, and the inexperienced counseling. These are some of the ways that we can mingle right where we are, so that when we get to know people and we're close to them, they can see more of God through us. We are to weep with those that weep and rejoice with those that rejoice. She says, accompanied by the power of persuasion and the power of prayer and the power of the love of God, this work cannot be without fruit. Coming alongside people is one of the greatest things we can do. The biggest health challenge at this time is loneliness. Loneliness is bad for people's health. You probably heard that if you are alone, feeling lonely, loneliness is as bad for your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And it can take like a decade off your life. We need connection. I worked with a heart surgeon one time, and he says, when I am operating on a person's heart, and they have to have deep heart surgery, he says, I ask them about their relationships, especially if they're married, their marriage. Because he said, I know if they have a good marriage, they have a better chance of success because they're connected to someone who loves them, and that is good for their heart. And if their marriage isn't so good, he sends them for counseling because he says, my surgery will not be as effective if you haven't taken care of the relational part of your heart. So think about it. Can you think of someone who helped you to taste the God flavors in the world and helped you to experience God's love? Can you remember when someone did that for you? You know, you can still be a Christian and someone does something amazing for you and it opens another window in your mind and your heart and you go, wow, I know more about how God loves me because of how that person treated me. And that's amazing. So how has someone helped you taste the God colors and flavors in the world? See the God colors and taste the flavors. And what can you learn from that? Sometimes someone does something very small for us, but it shows us God's love in an amazing way and opens up our heart to experience more. Often it's the little things that we do for others, the thoughtful little things that actually turn their lives around. You know, one time I was on the underground and someone they'd cut themselves and they were bleeding. And I said, look, I have a plaster in my bag. You know, don't bleed there. I can give you this. And she was just so grateful. She cried that someone gave her a Band-Aid. And those little things, when someone you don't know at all does something kind, it's just amazing. So how do we put salt and light into action? We're light, once again, when we help people see the God character through the way we live out our values. What are your values? What are your character strengths? How does your character show aspects of God's character? Now, we're never going to be like God, but together we can show little bits of who he is and create a jigsaw puzzle for the world, so that when they come into our fellowship, they experience different aspects of God through each one of us. And we are salt when we help them experience God's love through our friendship and our care. It's really interesting that when Jesus tells a parable about the second coming, he doesn't have all those that keep Sabbath on one side and all those that don't on the other. The sheep are those who have experienced God and share his character of love with those around them. That's what makes the difference between a sheep and a goat. They know God's love so well, it kind of just flows naturally out of them. They don't even have to think about what they're saying and doing. The love just flows. And we need to fill our hearts up with God's love. I often think of our hearts being a bit like this. You know, particularly at the end of the week, feel a bit floppy, right? Glad it's Sabbath. And then we let God breathe into our hearts, his Spirit. Hoping it doesn't pop here. So we get filled up with God's love by focusing on who he is and fellowshipping together or reading scriptures of God's love. That's never happened before, sorry about that. So he fills us up, and then we share it with people. Try not to make the same noise. But then we become depleted again, and we have to keep going back to God. Because then we can be kind and patient and generous and caring. And this cycle needs to keep going. And I think the more God fills up our heart with his love, the bigger our heart gets. And actually, when we filled it with God's love, our heart will never pop. He makes it big enough to hold whatever he shares with us. So, we won't do this right now, but you can just think, if in groups, how could you be sheep in your community? Maybe you can feed the hungry. Maybe you already are. Our little church where I live, where my husband is the pastor, it's a small church, and they feed more than 100 people. They give them food every Friday night. People come for the food bank because they can't afford food. And supermarkets give us the food that has run out of its date so we can share with them. Maybe there's ways to give clothes to those who need them, visit those who are sick and alone, particularly those who are lonely, because loneliness is an epidemic. And we've often neglected to think about who is just lonely around you in this place here. There are many, many lonely people. And where can they go to find friendship and love? So we can befriend the lonely, support those who are struggling, give dignity to those who feel ashamed, care for the homeless, the displaced, the migrants. There are so many ways that we can be like sheep in this community that just naturally let God's love flow through them to whatever need we experience around us. And this comes from knowing the shepherd. We can only be good sheep when we really know the shepherd, when we are close to him, and we listen to his voice in our life, prompting us to say this to this person, do this for this person, just smile at this person or say hello to them. We have a campaign in England on train stations, actually, to prevent people from committing suicide there. And they say, if you see someone wandering alone that's looking vulnerable on the railway platform, just go and say hello and ask them how to find something, or would they like a cup of coffee? And just someone interacting, saying hello, noticing them, giving them attention, can often be enough to turn their life around. So we need to experience his loving care for ourselves, fill our hearts up with his love, and go where he leads, because he takes us to amazing places when we follow him. So how do we meet needs? The people around us need friendship, they need smiles, comfort, affection, encouragement, respect, help, gratitude, and many other simple things. We can often make a big difference just by saying thank you to people, or smiling and noticing them, or seeing when someone looks sad and letting them know that you care about that. Some people just need a hug, or some encouragement when they're tired, or some really respectful word that lifts them up in their heart when they're feeling down and discouraged. And often one sentence can make a huge difference when we say it with love. But there's people around our neighborhood. So Anna moved into a new neighborhood, and she and her family and her husband wanted to connect with their neighborhood and tell people about Jesus, and they wondered how they were going to do it. And what they did is they involved the whole family in praying for the neighbors. They got to know them and talk to them as often as they could. If they passed them in the street and they were in the garden, they would always say hello or something. Or if they were in an apartment block, would say hello to people in the lift. And find opportunities to talk to them, to help them. My husband has started a WhatsApp group for our street, and people can say when they need some help, say when they've lost their cat, or say when they've got something to celebrate, and we can connect through that, and it's been a real ministry in our street. Anna and her family found that children break down barriers and open up doors. What they did was every month they would visit every person in their little street. They would just do something really simple. They would take a theme from the season, and they would go and knock on the door, and the children would say hello, and they would give the neighbors a cookie or some flowers or something to do with the season. Maybe they would make a heart on Valentine's Day that says, "We love you," or "Thank you for living it, being a good neighbor." And they would go, and the children would sing, they would give their little something and say hello to the neighbors, and the neighbors got to enjoy this. They got to look forward to those little children coming with their mum and sharing some kindness and love with them. And as they kept that up, they found out that people started to chat to them, and they invited people into their home and said, come over and have a drink in our house. Come over for fika or something like that. And let's just chat. And they got to know these people. And eventually they asked Anna, what does your husband do? And she says, well, he's actually a pastor. And they said, what does that involve? And she shared. And they said, well, sometimes he's got some questions about God. Can we ask him? And eventually they started a little Bible study in their home for their neighbors. They started coming along. And after a couple of years, some were even baptized. But they went out there first with their children to make friends, opened up their hearts to God, so they were able to come and talk when they had a problem, or come and ask their deep spiritual questions and have Bible studies. And it's also helped so people can see you doing your family life together. They see how you care for one another, how you love one another, and they learn from that. Ellen White says one of the greatest kind of forms of evangelism is a well-ordered home. A family that is functioning well is a blessing. And people say, how do you do that? How can you be such a loving family? And then they can learn about God too. So your home is a church too, and it can be a safe place for people to come and ask questions and find friends. And for some of you, you might just want to start a friendship group in your home, and people just come together for fika, and then maybe grow it into something else if people want. One of our neighbors, one pastor that lived in our town, started a craft group for children on a Friday night. He would tell them a Bible story and do a lovely craft with them every Friday night. And children used to love to come to his home and hear the story and do the craft. And a young man who has no Christian family at all came along to that group, and when he was 16, he was baptized, and he still comes to our church to this day, just from something very simple. We can also be sociable. When your church has something that's just a social event, invite friends along. And it's really helpful if churches have social events that have absolutely no spiritual content. People then feel safe. They know they can come along and just be friends. And maybe, when you have grace, you just get a little child to say it, so it's really like non-threatening. Because the more often people walk through our door to make friends, the easier it is for them to walk through the door to make friends with God. I'm going to show a video now of a lady, and maybe you might resonate with her. She doesn't feel like she's an amazing person because she's not a missionary, she's not a doctor, she's not doing something big in the world. But she, with her gifts, is making a massive difference. Let's see if this works.
I'm just a florist.
I'm just a florist.
Got a small shop.
I have a
Nothing
small
special.
shop. Nothing special.
Silly way to spend your life, I guess. Fussing with a bunch of flowers.
It's a funny way to spend your life, fussing with flowers.
Sometimes I wish I was good at something else.
Sometimes I wish I was something else.
A doctor or a missionary.
A doctor or a
Someone who
missionary.
really helps people. But I do love flowers.
But I do love flowers.
Always had a knack for it.
Always had a knack for it.
So I do my best to make them beautiful for people. But I know flowers can't change the world.
But I know flowers can't change the world.
I'm just a florist.
I'm just a florist.
just a florist.
Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters. Because no one is just a florist. No one is just anything. Because all that we do with love in serving God makes a difference, even if we can't see it. Oops. So, how do you find your mission? Her mission, and she didn't even realize it, was making flowers to bring people joy. And every person and every family is unique. We all have a unique part to play in the mission of sharing God's love with the world. And we each have a unique mission that's especially suited to their needs, their gifts, where we find ourselves. And whatever is our unique mission will bring us joy. We don't have to be afraid of it. God has given it to us as a gift to share. And when we discover it, we go, wow, I can't believe God lets me do that with him. And it's amazing. So how do we find our special gift? You have a worksheet. Oh, we're going to give out a worksheet now. And this worksheet is a place for you to take stock of your resources, your gifts, your talents, your passions, and see if there's a way you can find a pattern in there that will help you find your unique mission in the world. So you can take your form and look at it, this piece of paper. It's, I think, Swedish on one side and English on the other. And think about the different squares on the worksheet. And one of them is, what are your personal resources? What are your professional skills and training that you could use to bless others? How much time do you have? You'll have different time if you're a mother of small children, or if you're a retired person, if you work full-time and have long commute, or you work from home. We'll all have different amounts of time. What about your finances? What finances do you have? Even if you don't have very much, you can make a big difference. You don't need money to share God's love. Maybe you have a family, and your family is part of how you can reach out to those around you, like Anna did. The children were a way to connect with other people. And if you have a home, you have a place to invite people, however simple it is. You never need to worry about what your house looks like. And you can invite people to eat with you, even by taking a picnic to the park to share with them, or take some food to their house if you don't feel that your house is adequate. We've had sometimes the most amazing hospitality I have experienced is when someone says after church, come to my house, I've got nothing prepared, but just come. And maybe the house is a bit messy, and maybe the food is really simple. That doesn't matter. Their open hearts, their love means so much more. People never remember what they ate in your house. They'll never remember what your house looked like, but they will remember how much you love them or how you made them feel. That's what they will go away with. So what are your personal resources? And there's a square at the bottom left. To just think, what do you have? What have you got in your hands already that could be used? What are your resources? My mum is 87. She's caring for my 87-year-old father who's quite infirm. But always her gift through her life is to bring people joy and be kind. And now she sits at home with scraps of wool that the other church members give her, and she makes Bible finger puppets to share with children. And that is her mission, sitting at home, knitting finger puppets. And that's her blessing to the world. So even though she doesn't have much, and she can't even afford the wool very often, people give her the wool, and she uses it to make beautiful things. So what are your resources? How can you use them well? And then think, what are your practical skills? We all have different skills. Some people can cook and do hospitality, others are good at gardening, or maybe technical skills, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, decorating. These are all things that people around need. Sewing, crafts, music groups. How can you use these skills in your family's mission or your couple mission if you are a couple? What are your skills? There's one church where all the men get together on one Sunday in a month, and they go out to mend the old people's houses. They choose one house each time, and they say, what are all the odd jobs that we can do for you? Maybe they'll do some painting, or fix the fence, or fix the door lock, or change a light bulb. And there's such a blessing to the people in that home. And so whatever your skills are, we can use them to find people who have a need and share them with them. And my mum sews, she does the crafts to make the finger puppets. Oh, have I not turned it on here? Whoops. There we go. And what are your practical skills? Yeah, okay. Because they all can be used. If you're good at music and singing, perhaps you can visit an old people's home and sing to them, or even just go and visit people who can't come to church anymore and just sing a song and have a prayer, something short, because maybe they can't, they're too tired to have a longer meeting. But your gift can change their life when we look out for those who are lonely and we share God's love with them. So what are your practical skills? What can you do that can be a blessing to others? And what are your spiritual gifts? Do you know what your spiritual gifts are? You might think, well, I'm not a great preacher, I'm not a great evangelist or a teacher or a manager. But, the gifts are encouragement. We can all encourage one another. Generosity, and even the widow who could give one small coin was counted as generous. Mercy, being kind to one another. Serving, doing whatever needs to be done. Do you know, one time I was in a church as the pastor's wife, and I said to my husband, do you know what? There should be a job on the church nominating list that says gap filler, because I would just fill in all the gaps. If someone couldn't do something, I taught children's Sabbath school, adult Sabbath school, made food for the potluck, mended this, did that. So I said, don't give me a proper job, because I'm not here all the time, but I can fill in the gaps. And so, and then I felt, well, filling in the gaps isn't that special. But if we don't fill in the gaps, things fall apart. So maybe you can never be just a gap filler. A gap filler is an important job. And I think there are people who have an attitude of service. Whatever needs doing, I will do it. Whether it's cleaning the toilet or unplugging the pipes, whatever it is, there is always people who said, I'll do it. And they're the gap fillers, the people who serve. So there's all different gifts there, and we all have spiritual gifts. God has given them to all of us. I wonder what yours are. Do you know what yours are? There's actually some little online questionnaires you can take that will help you discover them if you don't know, but you have them. And if you're not sure what they are, ask your friends, because quite often they will know. They will see what you do, and they will tell you. And that's how those gifts are confirmed in us, when other people see us use them, and they notice what we do. We might think we're not doing very much, like the florist, and yet we're making a big difference. So what are your spiritual gifts? And what are your passions and your community interests? Is there a group of people that you really care about? Maybe you care about lonely people or elderly people or young families struggling, or people who've moved to this country. What is your passion? Who are the people that God has put on your heart to care for? And how can you find something in your gifts that will bless those people? So sometimes God has laid a special group of people on our hearts to care for. And also on this form you'll see your talents. What are your natural talents? Maybe you have a talent for learning languages and teaching other people, a talent for music, a talent for art and creativity, and they can all be used. God needs all of those things. Everything He has gifted you with, you can find a way to use that for Him. And here are some ideas of some things people have done that use their gifts. I have a friend who lives in a small town, and she asked the estate agent, the person who sells houses, tell me when someone new is moving into this town. And the estate agent would call her up and say, someone new is moving into this house. And after a day, she would go to visit them with a basket. She always had a tin of homemade cakes or biscuits and some flowers and some information about the local community that might be helpful. And she would take it to them and said, I just want to welcome you to our community. And she says, you're busy now, so just keep the tin and I will come back in a week to pick it up. That gave her another reason to go back and see them. And so she would come back a week later to collect the tin, and they would have a conversation. Do you want to meet up in a cafe and chat about what you need to know about this community? And they would meet with her, and she would get to know them. And she developed a whole system of people that when she was doing something for the community or something at church, she would teach crafts in the community, and she would invite people along to her craft classes. And this was a way that she made friends and brought people to church. And it started with her ministry of taking a welcome basket, some homemade biscuits or cakes into the community. There was one church that started a gratitude club, and they went out into the street of their little area of the town and said to people, who in this community needs to be thanked? Who is doing something special? And they found out that one of the bus drivers was very kind. He drove on a certain route. Everyone knew that he drove this route, and he was always kind to people with disabilities or mothers with prams. He would stop and go slow and help people. And so a little group from this church, and they made him a big badge that said, I've been thanked, and they gave him a big box of chocolates and a certificate. And they went and got on his bus, and they announced to everybody, we're from the Gratitude Club, and we just want to thank this bus driver because we've heard he's so kind. And they pinned this big badge on him that said, I've been thanked. And they gave him the chocolates and the certificate, and he cried. He said, I've never had a certificate in my life. And everyone on the bus cheered, and it brought joy into that community. Oops, I'm forgetting to put my slides on here. Here's the welcome basket. Here's the gratitude club. And quite a lot of people, you know about making bread and soup to feed the homeless and involve the children. They can chop up the vegetables. They love to make the soup and feel they're part of it. And the local supermarket where we live gives us a carload of food every Saturday night that's run past its sell-by date for us to use to make food. And we used to make meals in our church from that food. There was a very good cook, and she would just look at what was there, because she never knew till she came to the church what we'd been given, and she would plan a 3-course meal and serve it to anyone who came in from the community. In one of our churches, a lady decided to make quilts, and started in an interesting way, but she had no fabric. She thought, I want to make these bed covers for people, but I don't know where to get the fabric from. And we made these bed covers for women in the refuge who'd been abused. They had nowhere to go, and this was a safe place, and they would live there for a while with their children. And she said, where will I get the fabric? I want to bless them with a lovely quilt, which they can take to a new home when they go, or put over an old sofa, or put on their bed and help them to feel loved. And she went to a big curtain shop, and they said, oh, I'm glad you've come, because we've just taken all our old curtain samples down. And there was 100 of these curtain samples that were all around the wall, and we want to get rid of them, but we don't want them to be wasted. And so they gave us all this lovely fabric, and it was all coordinated how it went around the wall. And she and the people in my church would cut these into big shapes, so it wasn't lots of fiddly work, and we'd make 2 or 3 quilts one Sunday a month. And on the back we put Made with Love by Hearts and Hands, the caring ministry of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And we put a little pocket in the back, and we put a little book about God's love in the back of every quilt. And the ladies in the refuge, they looked forward to, when they were leaving, they would look forward to choosing the quilt they wanted to take with them. And it cost us nothing. And one time the lady there at the refuge said, we need pillowcases, and we kept all the linings from the curtains. And then we could use all that fabric to make pillowcases. So this is, sometimes you can contact local charities and say, what do you need us to make and do? And they will tell you, and they perhaps have different crafts and sewing projects that ladies can do together for all sorts of reasons, like making clothes for babies that are born prematurely and other things. The lady that runs the quilt club is 90 years old, and she's still running it. And during COVID, when she couldn't go out and meet with her group, she made, I don't know, about 30 of these quilts to share because she didn't want the ladies in the refuge to miss out. And here's the lovely thing. There was a lady she turned 30. And she thought, what shall I do for my 30th birthday? And she decided that she would do, on the day, 30 acts of kindness in her community. And she had children who were probably 6 and 8 or something like that. And she took the children with her, and they went to take flowers. So they bought several bunches of flowers, maybe 5, and they took them to a nursing home. So that was 5 of the 30. Then they took food to the old people that they knew in the community and gave them a nice hot meal. They took cookies that they made to the police station to thank the policeman. They went into a shop. In England, we have like a pound shop or a dollar shop, and they put a pound coin on packets, on different toys in the toy area, so that if a child picked up a toy that they wanted, the pound coin would be on the back to pay for it. And so she found these 30 things. She planned it in advance, and the children came along with her. And they were so amazed. It was so beautiful because the 8-year-old said, Mummy, it's my birthday in a couple of months' time. I want to celebrate my birthday the way you have. Because when we are kind to others, we are wired by God that it blesses us as well. One of the best ways to help someone who is feeling sad is to let them do something kind with you or do something kind on their own. But if they're too sad to kind of get going on their own, take them with you to see the joy that comes in someone's face when they receive kindness. Because when they do something kind for others, it releases the hormone in their brain that will help them to feel a bit happier. And so it's really useful to do that. But just think how wonderful that is to celebrate your birthday by doing something kind for every year you are. I'd struggle now at my age. I might have to kind of do half it or something like that to kind of manage it. But there's something that we can do which will bless other people and inspire the children as well to do the kind things. And when we remember the special dates of people's lives and celebrate with them, that means so much to them. Maybe you notice birthday cards on a windowsill near your street, and you just knock on the door and say, hey, I saw it was your birthday, and I've bought you a little something. I remember an act of kindness that happened to me about 40 years ago, and it was my birthday, and we were in America at Andrews, and it was quite lonely there. Nobody really knew us. But one lady realized it was my birthday, and when I went home, I found a box with a donut inside and a little candle on it, and it said, happy birthday. Do you know, I've had many amazing gifts in my life, but the one that I can remember really well is this donut with a little candle in it, and it was like someone noticed me, someone realized and cared for me, and that small action meant so much. So you could do something like that too. Just look out. These are just ideas, not that you have to do all of them, but just to show you how people who've discovered their mission are living their lives. Then we have a village in England called Congresbury. I don't even know if I pronounced it right. It's such a weird name. But this village church was 800 years old. And they thought, how shall we celebrate 800 years old? Shall we have a concert or a dinner or a garden party like we have in England? And someone said, why don't we collect 800 acts of kindness? So they did a very simple thing. They just made a chart, like you can see, acts of random kindness with a rainbow at the top, to measure how many kindnesses they had. They printed a postcard, which they put in the library and the shops and in people's houses. People filled in the card when someone had been kind to them. So they would, they just say, on this date, this kindness happened to me, this is what happened. And then there was a little cardboard box in the church made like a little letterbox, covered in paper with a little slot, very simple, and they collected the acts of kindness in that box. Even the people in the village who were not Christian got involved. They mowed each other's lawns, they cleaned cars, they left pies on doorsteps, and the whole community got involved. And it's only a small village, but on Christmas Day, they got their 800th act of kindness. And they were so overjoyed. So they're famous for being the kindest village in England. And this happened quite a few years ago, so I thought, I'm going to see where they are now, what's happening in that village. So I Googled and found a report about it. And the church in that village started a little cafe. They said no one in this village should ever be lonely. Anyone can come to this cafe and they can have a drink and a cake. They don't even have to pay. So it's paid for by donation. And when you go there, they will say recommended donation, and they give you an envelope, and you put your money in the envelope. If you can't pay it, it doesn't matter. But many people pay a bit extra, so it covers the cost of those who can't pay. And they have a place where people can help themselves to clothes that nobody wants, and they run some little events, games, things like that, so people can come and join in. And they have a little sign for the table. So when you go and have a drink there, you can put a sign on your table that says, happy to talk, so that people know they can come and sit with you and have a little chat. And they even have some little questions. If you're not quite sure what to ask, why not talk about this, to build up a sense of community. So what can we do? We can work with others to set goals together. So one church decided they were all going to set a goal. So maybe they all said, okay, we're going to do one mission act every month, all of us. Whatever it is that we feel called to do, however small, we're going to try and do one a month. And whenever we do it, we will put a button in a jar or measure it in some way. And when we reach so many, then we'll have a celebration in our church that's a social to which we can invite friends that we've made. Nothing spiritual to begin with, just a time to be together, to have a games night or a movie night or something like that. Or even an auction to raise money for a good cause. So some people are working together in these groups with their families. So they have families work together to do their little mission projects. They involve their kids in it. And then when those families have got so many, like 20 acts of kindness, then they celebrate as a group of families. So I wonder what God is inviting you and your family to do for him in this community here. What is God calling you to do? And how is he calling you to make a difference? And every one of us has a unique thing that we can do. And I can tell you, it will bring you joy when you find that, something that God has created you to do, that you can share his love. Because whenever we share his love with anyone, in whatever way, it brings us joy as well as them, and it blesses. And the ripples of that kindness ripple out. I want to challenge you, because imagine that next year there is a competition in Stockholm for the kindest church. Are you known to being the most caring church in Stockholm? Are you famous for being kind? So imagine that next year, that says Skopje, that should say Stockholm, it's from an old version, that your church wins a competition for being the most caring church in your town, in your city. What will you do between now and next year for you to win this trophy of the kindest church in Stockholm? And wouldn't it be amazing if we were famous for that? What are the obstacles that are in your way? What will you do to overcome them, so that people know that you are Christians and Adventists by your kindness. Wouldn't that be amazing? And so I just want to pray that God will bless you as you're on this journey to discover your mission. You may not know what it is right now, but you can keep praying, looking out, saying, God, show me what I can do right where I am. And maybe it's just encouraging the people in your workplace, looking out for the lonely ones. Like on the florist video, someone took some flowers to a colleague that looked a little sad. Maybe she was new. Make friends. Just put something special on their desk and saying, I hope you have a lovely day, or why don't we go and eat lunch together? Something like that. So find out how you can bless wherever you are and share with the people that need to know God's love. Look out for those who are lonely and find ways to connect with them, because you'll be an amazing gift in their lives to warm their hearts. So may God bless you as you discover your unique mission and become a light person and a salty person here in Stockholm to share God's love with a broken world. Let's pray. Father God, we want to thank you for your incredible love for us. May we never forget what you have done to show love to us. May we ask that our picture of your love, our experience of your love is enlarged so that we can experience more and more of how much you love us, so it could fill our hearts and overflow into this hurting world. I pray that you will work with each person here and help them to find something that they love to do, that they can do for you in this community. Because when you gift us, when you use us, you've made us for a special purpose. And we can bring joy in our own unique way. Even if we're quiet and shy, we can find a way to share your love with this world when your love pours through us. So I pray for everyone in this church and all the churches that meet in this little community here in Stockholm. I pray that your love will be shown in the lives of those people. They will take that love out and share it in this community so that people will know we are Christians because of the way we love each other and the way that we love them. So make us light and salt. Give us the courage to mingle so that people may know who you are and see you through the humble and simple ways that we love them. Thank you for this amazing privilege. And if we're not quite sure what to do right now, I pray that in time you will show people what their special little thing is that they can do to share your love. And may it bring them joy, I pray. In Jesus' name, amen.